Hi, Simon.
Hi, Lisa.
How are you doing surviving post-holiday?
Um, I mean, I'm doing pretty well. I've noticed that my inbox though is getting full of lots of, post-holiday sales and clearance this and that. So,
I'm sure you've been getting those even starting in October, though, right?
well, I
Getting a lot
was
of those.
I was definitely getting a lot of sale ones, but I think post-holiday it's like everybody it's 50% off something or a lot of their holiday merchandise. Last year, I had a great experience. I got an email from a large home retailer, and they were offering like 75% off our holiday Christmas china that we have. And it's really nice china, but we've always short a set. So now I'm like 75% off. That's a great offer, right? They took me right to a page. There was my china, picked the plates, the bowls, everything was great. This year, I got an email from home houseware, kitchen, high-end kitchen retailer. And it was like 65% off of these brands, right? And some of the brands were ones like, I like that. I use those knives, or we have that glassware or whatever. And I clicked through on this email, and it's literally like 1,129 products on sale. There was just literally, it sent me to their sale page. It had
I was gonna
nothing.
say the kitchen sink,
Yeah,
but
it literally was the kitchen sink of
yeah.
clearance stuff. And of course too, the structure, there's not like the things they featured in the email were at the top of the page, right? Literally it was just stuff. And I
I
was
hate
like,
that.
it was terrible. And I even tried to sort of dig through it, and I'm like, where the heck are the filters? And by that time I couldn't even remember what they had enticed me with.
You're like, what was I looking for? I know I do that a lot too. And I'm like, why? What am I researching? I
What am I?
forget.
Yeah,
I know.
exactly. And then
God.
sometimes you're like looking and you're like, this is like 10% off. Where's the 65% off?
Yeah, or I'll get this item is not
Part
available
of
or
the
it's not
sale.
eligible.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
That's another thing. I feel like there should be a law.
I know. Maybe there is. I don't know. Well, that's a good tie-in to what
Today's
our topic
topic.
is today. Yeah, we're going
Yeah.
to talk about landing pages and what makes landing pages that work, what's a good approach, design strategy and even optimization.
Yeah. I mean, we
So,
just we just talked about it, so that's all you need to know.
I know we talked about what not to do.
Right.
So let's talk about some of the what are some principles, if you will, about landing pages? Or maybe even we don't even do it that, why do we create a landing page? What's the
Yeah.
point? What is it?
That's a great question. And something I think that is really sometimes people miss the mark, right? In the sense that talking about that email that just sent me to the whole clearance section that had over 1,000 products, a really good, the goal of a landing page is to basically link off or carry on the conversation that you've started in email or on social. It takes your campaign right to the website so that it becomes more actionable. The idea of a landing page is to really create targeted experience that leads to usually an end objective, right? Getting someone to sign up or
I was going to say it's got a goal, or it usually the goal is a conversion, but that conversion could be signing up for a newsletter. It could be something like that. And I think some of the things that you were alluding to are maybe the principles that go into it. And maybe we should get into some of the tips.
yeah. I think in a nutshell, you want landing pages because generally speaking, they outperform just taking someone to your homepage of your website or a catalog page or whatever. When you are really focused and helping guide someone through, they're going to convert better. It's like having a conversation with someone that really comes down to one sort of point. So yeah, what are those
Well, wait.
elements? Well, go ahead. Wait.
Wait. So we haven't done that in a while. I haven't had to give you a timeout in while. But I was just, you made a very interesting point. So you talked about that a landing page will help you with a conversion. It's more specific, it's related to a campaign versus a generic page. A lot of times you can drive people to your home page, or you can drive people to a page that exists already, but it's better to create a page that is specific for your campaign's purposes. So it's more
Right.
like it's a very targeted specific thing, whereas other parts on your website are informative, they serve a purpose, but you don't know as much about who those people are. They're just coming to your site. Whereas a campaign that drives to a landing page, it's like, these people are coming from email, or they're coming from search, or they're coming from paid search, I might add, or they're coming from display advertising. So you know who they are loosely. And so you can create a very targeted, very specific page for a very specific purpose.
Yeah, I think
And
well, just to say that home pages are typically what would be classified as a routing page or a hub. And they
mhm.
usually have many different like options, choices for the visitor to choose, right? And so that's why, if you're talking about something specific, you could feature it on the top of your homepage. But if you have lots of other things on the page for someone to maybe get distracted by or click on or whatever, they may not follow through on what you were intending them to do when they got to that page. So that, again, to your point, that's why it's a very targeted. A landing page helps keep people in the funnel, essentially.
Yeah, so let's talk about there are elements or components of a landing page that are probably the must-haves, but I would say there's also the things not to have, and you just said one, which you said remove distractions. And it is a very common best practice to have your landing page without the navigation of your site. So your website platform should have the ability to allow you to remove that, so that they get to the page and then they're like, oh, what's this other thing? And like you said, a few minutes ago, that you're like, I forgot what I was looking for. And so you get lost
Shiny
sometimes. So
object. Shiny
yeah. So if
object.
you remove all those and you literally just have like, I want the person to do this one thing. So I have to remove all distractions. What's a tip for you that you think what's a top thing that you must have for your landing page? Essential elements for your landing
Yeah.
page.
Well, we touched on this. I think it has to carry on your campaign story. So whatever your visuals are, whatever your headline was, you set an expectation with the visitor who opened the email or looked at the social piece. The landing page needs to sort of fulfill on that. So you want that cohesiveness of the campaign. That's a really important thing, I think, to have it be, okay, I know where I am. I clicked on something. I understand this is going to take me deeper. You might have options on that page, though, to move someone laterally. Sometimes a landing page does need to do both conversion and education. So you have to balance those two things.
That's true. And with that being said, I would say what your content says specifically, it's not just like a visual alignment, but it's also your copy has to
Absolutely.
address. So the thing that you're coming from, whatever that is, if it's an ad, is most like it's some sort of a hook. And then your landing page has to answer that. And it might not even be answering it right, like in the words, and then they're done. It might be like, oh, and then this guide that you can give us your email address for will answer those questions. So it might have another level, but ultimately that landing page, something on there has to serve the purpose of addressing whatever your ad or campaign said.
Right. And I think once someone gets to the landing page, like I said, you can have additional information available to them. But as long as they see that connection and then they know what the logical next step is or what's the call to action, like the landing page it shouldn't have a million different things like a homepage to click on. It should probably have one or two, right?
Yeah. Oh God. So I will say from like a content standpoint, like you'll have there's usually some sort of a headline, and if we want to get technical, it's usually an H1. So
Right.
maybe we talk about technical things on another episode. But it's like, it's a headline. There's probably some copy underneath there. And then sometimes I've seen successful landing pages that it depends on what your product or service is. It might have I don't know, it's three. I feel like a lot of things are in threes benefits of what your product or service is offering. So if you think of it from top to bottom, it's like there's this main message, there's maybe some copy that supports that. And then there are three, they could be benefits, they could be proof points, they could be something that support whatever it is your promise is at the top that is addressing, again, where they came from, whatever that problem was that you introduced.
I mean, I think about it in a real world brick and mortar. It's a sales process, right? Your marketing is part of the sales process, the conversion process. And so if you walked into a store with some sort of idea of what you were brought in by an advertisement or something you saw in the newspaper, I'm really dating myself, you would go in and someone would speak to you and probably in a very concise way say, oh, this is what you're looking for and this is why it matters, right? To your point about three sort of benefit oriented bullets, they can also be bullets that basically anticipated pain points. They counter to that. So if we as marketers already know that people are concerned about how expensive something might be, for example, there can be a benefit point that says it's an investment that over time it's going to pay for itself, kind of thing, because maybe it's reliable or it's of good quality or things like that. So you can use that again in a very concise way to sort of, you're tying up the sale. You're trying to make the sale, but that doesn't always happen, right? So sometimes you need to say people aren't ready. That's why you might have a couple sub call to action that are more educational. You could even have like a form, like you're just not ready, but you want to keep someone in the sort of pool of potential customers, right?
Keep them warm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, like what is that next step? So there's the call to action. We've talked about that. And then what makes a good call to action? We should probably dive into that next. But that having a form is something that is very common for that next step. If it is not something that is, buy whatever your thing is or try, if it's not that immediate, then you, like Simon said, it's that form to nurture people along. So then, yeah, so let's get into the what makes a good call to action, because I feel like while we talk about the call to action, you have to remember, what is the goal? What are you trying to get people to do with this landing page? Are you trying to get them to buy? Are you trying to get their name? Are you trying to get them to download something, sign up for something? What are you trying to get them to do? So what do you think makes a call to action like stand out and encourage action?
Well, I think there's a couple different elements. There is the words that actually make up the call to action, right? That might be in the button or around the button. Those words typically need to be action oriented. Like you were saying, explore, buy, learn more. If you just put learn more, click here, it's sort of a cop out. Like I can't stand that actually. But if you said something like learn more about X, see the product features, or buy now, you want to make it so it's something that, again, we call it sort of signposts also. It's a clear, if I click this, I know it's going to happen kind of thing.
Yeah. And while I hate learn more, I do think that there are some cases where it's fine. So let's say it's something that you're offering, and the primary thing to get them to do something is to sign up or buy now or something like that, which feels very like, I know what I'm getting with this. If learn more is kind of right next to it in a different style that is a little bit secondary, I think that's fine, because it's almost like, okay, I'm not ready yet. Learn more is safe. And in that, if it's contextual, it's okay. So I'm with you though. If you can be more as descriptive as possible, then do that. But in some cases, you might have to fall back to learn more.
And again, I think we say this a lot, but in context is really important, right? And being very relevant, right? That's the IRS rule: in context, relevant, and specific. not ambiguous, things like that. I will pull a little bit of a sidebar marketing here. Just to call out something too, if you're thinking about designing your content for disabilities,
I think
Americans
it's the
Disability
Disabilities
Act.
Act. Yeah.
And that's everything from having the right font sizes, the colors need to have a lot of contrast. Yeah. One of the things that dings you is if you had multiple links on this webpage and they were all the same link. They all said learn more, learn more, learn more, but they went different places. Imagine someone who has visual impairment. They may have a screen reader that's reading the text. It's literally, if it's no context, it's going to start saying 3 or 4 learn more. So they're not going to know what to click on.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
That's just a little sidebar. When you think about designing your site, you want to think about it being for everybody. And you don't know your audience really. And so they could be reading it. They could be using a screen reader. There are other tools and things that are used. So I think that also leads to this, you want to ensure that your landing page works for mobile. Thinking about the people who are coming, where do you and I open your email most of the time? On my phone.
100%.
Meetings at the doctor's office, whatever. You might have a moment and you check your email or you check your social feed or whatever. You want to make sure that if someone's like, oh, that's really interesting, that's a great sale, I like this ad, whatever, that they click through and it works on mobile. There's something worse than, and actually, you know what? I'm going to ding them out loud for this. Southwest has a great mobile app and an excellent web experience, but there are things where you register for they'll have if you travel 10 times in the next 40 days, we'll give you bonus points, but you've got to register or things like that. They're kind of weird little promotions. Mm-hmm. And I click them. It goes to a non-optimized web page that I have to pinch and zoom around on my phone.
Which is stupid if they know you're doing this from the app. So why?
Yeah, this is email.
Oh, okay.
But why not go to the app? Why not just build a mobile web experience? Southwest, I love you, but there's some things that are just really crazy. But I have to say they have great policy on flight credits and you can cancel 2 hours before your flight, et cetera, et cetera. So kudos on that point. So mobile, we talked about mobile. I think the other thing is, and you sort of talked about this as we were saying earlier, you want to make sure that the page has hierarchy. Right. So that the design of the CTA that you really want someone to click on, that shiny object, is much more prominent, much more attention grabbing than, say, a text link for a secondary call to action and things. And oftentimes you'll see this. You'll see a white button and next to it sort of a gray button, right? Or 2 different colors. Google a few years ago did a color study. They determined that the Google blue that you see is the most clicked color for CTAs, and it has the least amount of bias. So in the US, we think of green for buying because we have money.
Good. Yeah.
Well, our money is green and black, right? But in Europe and other countries, their money is all kinds of colors, right? So you have to also think about those bias sort of things as you're doing design work. And then again, mobile, it just has to be fast. Make it respond to the user. Don't let them have to wait for big files to load, optimize your images, things like that.
Yeah. Oh my God. Optimize your images. That is something that sidebar marketing is that if you have a lot of images on your website, this is not just landing pages. This is any page on your website. You have to optimize them. There's somebody that I was consulting for that the site was taking a really long time to load. And I thought it was the platform. And then I looked at all the images and I'm like, there were so many images and none of them, they were physically really large, which made them also very large from a file size standpoint. And it slows your site down tremendously.
Right.
Okay.
The other
sidebar.
Yeah, end of sidebar. There are other things that slow your site down, but just be conscious of that. We'll talk
Yeah.
about that another day.
Oh, I know. I feel like we say that all the time. So let's how do we know if it's a good landing page or not? So let's say we give people a bunch of suggestions and say, oh, have a headline and a subhead and a form and a call to action and maybe some benefits. And let's say, if we handed somebody all of the, like, here's a good template. How do we know it's a good template? How do we know that it's effective or not? What do we do?
We test.
That's right.
I mean, you can have great templates that still don't work for every scenario because you're not just testing. You want to test the template, the layout, the headlines. You got to test
copy,
images, where you put the button,
absence of something or not. As I mentioned, stripping out navigation versus not. You could test that. Yeah.
And so basically the concept is the importance of A/B testing, where you essentially have a control, which is what you're either using or propose to use as your design, and you want to test it against a different design. And you should be doing your A/B testing on both desktop and mobile because you may get different metrics.
Analyze it separately is
exactly.
Because it could be different.
And I think you can also look at some of the stuff that we talked about in our last episode, which is really how much time someone's spending on your page. If you're doing a landing page and you read it yourself
When did we talk about that?
We talked about time on page during analytics.
We did?
Yeah.
What did we
Bounce
say?
rate. Well, we just said
bounce rate. Oh, yeah,
sure. These are metrics that you look at over time, typically, right?
Right. Okay,
time on. But what I'm saying is, if you create a complicated landing page and someone's spending a lot of time on it, it's probably not helping your funnel, right? They're getting stuck. You're making them read way too much. Maybe that's where you figure out that the button should come up on the page, things like that.
Yeah, and I will say if you're testing, test one thing at a time. And if you have your control is whatever, exists today, and then your new version, you're like changing the layout and you're changing the copy and you're changing the images and you're changing the call to action. And if you change every single thing and something is effective, or maybe if it's not, you don't know what that was. Like, you got to change one thing at a time. So maybe you just change your image or you just change your headline.
And I will agree with you, and at the same time say that a lot of times testing one thing at a time takes a long time. The reality is an A/B test probably takes 2 to 3 weeks.
Yep.
Because you
have to have enough traffic.
Have to have enough traffic and enough conversions, right? You have to have the conversion that may or may not be purchased. Maybe it's just click through to drive more people to click. Ultimately, you need them to buy or whatever. But if you're really just testing a landing page, the goal is to get them through the landing page to the next step, which may be the cart, but it might be some other information, whatever.
Well, you're just making me realize, I know we've talked about, we wanted to do an episode on testing. Mm-hmm. And I actually think that the notion of optimizing for conversions and the funnel and all that, I do think that that's something that we should probably address sooner rather than later, because it's an important component.
And if you have specific questions after right now thinking about testing and analytics, go ahead and put them in the comment section, and we'll use that as a guide for us to answer those questions in maybe the testing episode and things like that. So,
yep. Anything else on testing and optimization you want to touch on?
Yeah, the last thing I was going to say is a lot of times people will run tests and there's not enough lift or change between the two variables that you're testing. And people will call that do no harm, right? So sometimes it is do no harm, but sometimes you may not be testing the right thing. So sometimes, and this is where I'm like, you just have to, if you're deciding to make a change and you believe based on all of your other experience that this is a better experience for the user, change it. You know what I mean? Don't.
Well, it could just be a preference too. Let's say if you have a black background versus a white background, and it doesn't make a difference. Your CEO likes one better than the other one. Right. Sure. It's not a data-driven solution, but yeah, you can still do it though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good call.
I think sometimes people are like terrified, like, oh, I can't change it. I didn't get to test it. And it's like, no. But if you change it and obviously your conversion rate falls to the underground
Precipitously. Yeah.
then you're going to be like, oops, maybe we made a mistake. And that's okay. You learned something. Then you have to figure out what it was. One more thing I would say, another thing you can do that is a little more timely than A/B testing is you can find people that you know that you work with in your company or maybe just in your circle of community. And show them the pages and ask them if they went through them, do a quick Zoom call with somebody and do some user testing, right? And get some feedback on, I didn't understand what this was, or this link didn't make sense to me, or, oh, this was great. I totally know you want me to click here and here. So, and especially if you can build the pages, even if they're not live, I mean, in the public world, I think user testing. The benefit of user testing is, again, what we talked about in our last episode, which is you not only see the action, right, but you understand the intent because someone's willing to tell you what they were thinking.
It's true. It's also a survey of one. So you don't have to take everything that they say at face value, but use your common sense. If they're like,
Absolutely.
oh, this was not clear to me, then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it.
But if you talk to 10 of your friends and they all tell you it sucks,
right,
you might
but there are things where sometimes it's like it's a different issue than the usability. It's like it's a user error. Like they literally are, doing something where you're like, they're not clicking the right thing. So that's just as an aside. Just keep that in mind that you don't have to take what one person says is not gospel. You are the expert of your business. And so again, take it with a grain of salt.
This is how marketing is, all the elements and things that you can do, topics of marketing work together. It's like, do a survey, ask questions on your webpage.
Absolutely.
So there's lots of ways to understand if a page is working or not working. I think that's the net goal.
Well, another topic, surveys, because that's a whole other thing too. So I wrote that down because I think that's how to create a good survey.
I mean, you mentioned like what are some of the most common reasons that you've seen landing pages fail? Like why don't they convert?
Well, one of the things that you said, so that user experience going from whatever they're coming from and going to your landing page, if there's a disconnect, then they're not gonna move on. Like to me, that's probably the top thing. Is just like
they feel lost.
Yeah, and probably
or
like
deceived.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, no, what are you doing?
Was I punked?
Yeah, it's not good. So that's probably the top thing. I mean, there's a lot. Like, what are like getting distracted, like we talked about. What are some other?
I think ignoring performance, like you talked about, pages that take forever to load and giant images.
They'll leave. Yep.
If you look at your web analytics, it's going to tell you what percentage of your visitors are mobile. And so how you'll understand the level of importance, I guess, or priority to making sure those landing pages are mobile, because they're more likely, especially if they're email or social driven, to be accessed from a mobile device. That's just the way it is. That's the way we are now.
Yep.
Any examples of pages you can think about that you've built? I mean, we've all done it. I'm guilty.
Yeah. So some of it is it's a struggle with who you're working with, where sometimes people are like, whoever the most important person is in the company says, I want to include all of this information, and it's too much information. And so to me, sometimes you have to just launch something like that, and then you start to test, and you'll say, okay, well, here's a version without all this extra stuff. And that's literally a component you can test, is the absence or existence of something. So if you slowly start to remove things and you think it's better, then great, because sometimes less is more.
Yeah. I mean, there's one tenet of web is thinking about progressive disclosure, right? So the idea of, as you take someone through a funnel, how much information or what information do you give them at what step, and what makes sense? What should they discover and sort of engage with versus you sort of force down their throat? So yeah, that's a good point. Especially, yeah, we all know about the most important people in the room kind of concept.
HIPAA, highest paid person in the organization.
Okay.
Hippo.
Hippo.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other
So,
things?
well, I was going to say, on a positive sense, and we touched on it a little earlier, you could design a landing page that supports a couple different pieces of your campaign. Now, I don't mean that it should be disparate campaigns that go to the same landing page. The idea is that you might have a social post that's higher in the funnel than, say, an email where you know something about the user that you're emailing, or vice versa. And there's some tricks where you could anchor things on the page. So you could use the same landing page. You could bring someone down into the section that's appropriate for them based on what they clicked on. But around that is still other content. So if they needed to sort of move up the funnel to get some understanding, or they want to go deeper, it's there. That is sort of that's one way to sort of maybe make a landing page work a little harder. But again, you don't want to cause confusion. You don't want people to get stuck because they landed on a page with so much stuff. Are there any tools that...
Well, yes, but before we get into that, you just made me think of something. So when you were talking about having a control versus a test, one of the things that you can actually do is you can split traffic between an existing web page. So perhaps your ads are driving to, a lot of people do this. They go to the homepage, which is not the best thing, but maybe if you're already doing that, have that be your control, and then you create a landing page. They're going to be drastically different, but at least start with that just to see.
That's
it's just a place to start, and then that landing page will eventually become the control, and you'll test against that.
And I think also commonly is you get an email about a product and you send them right to the product page.
Exactly.
Without any...
That is, yep. No need
education.
To change anything. Yep.
So you might test a landing page where there's a little more education, it's a little more cohesive to the campaign, and then send them to the product page and then see what clicks. So
Yep. So I interrupted you, but you were asking about, are there any tools? And it's funny because there should be a better way within, say, Squarespace, Wix, whatever, where they have a pre-made landing page that's best practices, and they don't. You can create your own, and you can. And I know Wix for sure, you can say, exclude my navigation. So you can do that. You can create a page, you say just a little check box, or you deselect it. So that removes it, but then you have to do the layout yourself. But then there's other products that offer, it's like standalone landing pages, and you can do testing with this. The benefit is that, let's say you have a complicated website that somebody else is managing all of it and you're not allowed to touch it. You can sign up for this service, and then you can do testing. It'll also let you use your own domain. So let's say, some of the names are Instapage is one, Unbounce is one. Those are the two that I know most. And then when looking up some other ones, there's another one called Heyflow, Heyflow. And I mean, they're not cheap. They do have free trials, but then let's see, Instapage as of today, it's starts at $79 a month. Unbounce starts at $99 a month. And maybe if you dig a little bit, maybe they have some free version somewhere that has branding or something like that, but I didn't see it.
So are you saying you can use are these like subdomains to your domain?
I know you can connect it to your domain, so I don't know if it turns it into a subdomain. It probably does. That makes sense. I bet that's exactly how it is. It's just like in a subdomain, just so people know. So let's say it's mostlymarketing.com/resources. We could do resources.itsmostlymarketing.com. That's a subdomain, but technically it's like it's living under a folder within our website.
Yeah, it's
a simple way to explain it.
I think so. It's different than www.itsmostlymarketing.com. A lot of companies will do landing page or LP dot their domain name, or
you could do success
right
dot whatever.
Yep.
You could do whatever you want.
And then,
but anyways, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, we're gonna ask. Well, I was gonna elaborate on it a little bit more. So they have all of these services are They have recommended layouts you could do, but it's very easy. You literally just drop in your information. There was another one. Now that I think about it, I think it's called yep.so. And you type in a prompt and you're like, this is what my product is. This is what and then it like populates the whole thing. It's kind of
Wow.
crazy.
Okay.
I don't remember how much that one is. So I'll have to, we can put it in the show notes also for the resources that we found on our blog.
Put it in the comments if you know, or you have any other one of these tools for creating landing pages.
Yeah. And it has all of the it's a typical best practice. So then another component that we didn't even talk about, if it's applicable to you, having what they call social proof. So that might be customer quotes, that might be reviews, that might be awards. When you add that offers credibility to your business as well.
Sure.
What else? I feel like that's kind of the
that
crux of it all.
Yeah. Again, I think if in sort of summing it up, you want a page that is, in a sense, simple. It's very focused, right? It's tied to your essence of your campaign. You want to make sure you have a plan to test things on the page or test it against a previous, like you said, destination. And then you also want to, take a look at, all your metrics. Be measuring, right? Analytics is key.
Always be measuring.
Always be measuring.
Yep.
So, anything else you would add?
I think this is a good summary.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
do you want to kick off our Yeah, you go.
From tangents
nope.
to tactics to tangents.
Nope.
I said it right the first time.
You did. Tangents.
You did. Okay. From tangents.
Go again.
From tangents.
It's mostly marketing.
Have a good one.